it's in lock and key, there's an approval process in place, and then you distribute. In this case, the answer was, and I'm surprised and sorry to tell you, oh, this USBs, it's safe because it does not leave the premises. These USBs are in the office, that's why it is safe and everybody can use it in the network. And I was shocked with this reply.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. With IIOT devices on the shop floor capable of altering the state of machines through exposed endpoints for hackers, operational security is vital for manufacturers or distributors. While security issues could be frightening and you might opt to take the approach of not connecting your shop floor with the internet, you might be missing out on the benefits that Industry 4.0 machines and devices offer. With careful planning and processes, operational security is manageable. In today's episode, we have our guest, Denrich Sananda, who discusses how operational security is vital to ensure that your plant is always available and operational without any danger to the lives inside the plant. He also describes the difference between operational and cybersecurity and how to plan for the security of your facilities. Finally, he describes various concepts related to operational security, such as the interplay of networks, machines, and touchpoints, and where you may have security holes in your premises. Let me introduce Denrich to you. Denrich Sananda is a Harvard Business School General Management Program, a qualified business leader with 22 plus years of experience in the process automation sector. His progressive career has been based upon a platform of the strong customer, OEM, and EPC relationships and experience within the Middle East, India, CIS, North America, and Turkey region. A strong advocate of digital transformation technologies with extensive experience in providing high-impact business growth, Denrich is skilled in brokering innovative end-user solutions to optimize business and operational expenditure, significantly increasing revenue generation. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey Denrich, welcome to the show.
Hi Sam, thank you for having me.
Of course, it's my pleasure, and I am super excited to talk about the operational security. We have not had any episodes so far about the security, and security is always a very sensitive topic, especially in manufacturing and distribution. So super excited to talk about that. But before we do that, do you want to start with your personal story and your current focus, Denrich?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be my pleasure. So I'll begin my story a little bit from India. That's where I am from. I'm born and brought up in Mumbai, but most of my career I spent in Dubai. So I lived 17 years in Dubai. I worked for a German firm and I started off as a service engineer. But my growth in the last 17 years has been exponential. I became the head of technical support and complete head of consulting, technical support, training. I started the consulting and this training practice for this German company for the Middle East operations. And my last 6 years of my career with them, I was very fortunate to be promoted as the managing director / vice president for the whole region. And I took that business, which was doing say about roughly 7 million US dollars, within 3.5 years to say about 24.7 million US dollars. And when I left in March 2019, I had a team of 81. I started with 27 people, and when I left, 81 guys had opened up offices in Turkey, a branch office in Qatar, of operations in Oman. Now it has grown to 22 people. So I think so. I had a very satisfying career, and my job profile was also into safety, functional safety, risk mitigation, and all this nice fancy practices. And my industry experience is oil and gas mostly, fertilizer plant, specialty chemicals. So these are the industry what we touched. So yeah, I had quite a interesting journey, and I also, just to add to it, converted the company from a reactive to a proactive company, for thinking small to thinking big. So it was also a transformation of that particular company. So that was a little bit background about myself. And currently, what I do since last 2 years, I'm in Canada, and I have started my own OT or industrial cybersecurity practice here since last 5 months. And this journey has been exciting. I would just add my company, Arista Technologies Limited, is dynamic, and I have a vision and a plan. And that vision is to be the most trusted partners for small and medium businesses in Canada. So that's my vision for cybersecurity.
Okay, amazing. So during that growth, I'm pretty sure you have worked with many different clients in various different capacity in solving their security problems. So obviously, we would love to hear those stories. But before we do that, we have one of these standard questions that we ask every single guest that come on the show, and that is going to be, Denrich, your perspective on business growth.
For me, growth, it's a great question, Sam. Growth is a mindset. And just to tell you, growth is not about numbers. For me, it's about purpose and impact. How you're impacting your business, how you're impacting your employees, and how you're going to take the business or your employees as whole to the next level. And this is what growth has been. The meaning of growth for me has been from a business perspective. Same thing I would just add on to it. When you talk about OT or security in general, if you don't have strong security measures in place or controls in place, you also hamper your growth. So when I talk now, I talk growth in terms of the OT practices as well.
Okay, amazing. Great insights there. And I love your perspective on growth. So let's start overall in terms of, positioning of operational security. So let's say if the listeners may not be familiar with how your operational security or the OT security differs from your cybersecurity, obviously in the cybersecurity world as well, there are many different security practices, and operational security is going to be completely different from your cybersecurity. So tell us how operational security is different from your cybersecurity, and what listeners need to know about these two different domains and how to prepare for these two. I know you might not be able to talk as much about cybersecurity, but overall, from the positioning perspective, can you touch how operational security differs from your cybersecurity?
One of the most important difference between IT and OT security is, in OT security, availability is the most important thing. In
Okay.
IT security, it is confidentiality. So you have this triad, it's called CIA: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So when you map it, IT focuses on the most important is confidentiality, and when we map on the OT side is availability. And there are many other differences, but just to, this is one of the main differences. And now, when you go about kind of planning for OT security, so I would
Yeah.
like to touch on that. What are the few things any company should keep in their mind when they are thinking or beginning to start working on OT or industrial security? So first thing, what I would say is to define the business rationale.
Okay.
People should not feel that adding another layer, because Sam, in every industry you have different layers, and now people say, oh, now I have a one more layer to work with, and that is cybersecurity. That should not be the case. Why? I'll tell you the reason. What is the purpose of the business? The purpose of the business is obviously to make money, profitability, and growth. This is the purpose. So whenever you're doing cybersecurity, your business goals should be aligned to also the cybersecurity goals. That is why what I'm saying is you should first of all define the business rationale for cybersecurity. Does this make sense?
Okay, amazing. So let's talk about the availability and what do you mean by availability when you think from the operational security perspective? So let's say if I'm either the manufacturer or I'm in the chemical manufacturing space and I am trying to figure out how to plan around availability. Can you describe what availability means? And if you have an example or a story related to availability, what it means by not available versus available.
Availability means having the plant running all most of the time, having uptime. That is the
Yeah.
simple definition of availability. And any process industry or even in manufacturing industry, what is most important thing is to keep the plant running. When the plant is running, you are making money and there is productivity for that. So whenever we come into the industrial side, the cybersecurity thing is to make sure the plant is running at all given times. So this is one of the most important part for us. And I would give you a simple example, and today's example everybody knows is Colonial Pipeline.
Yeah.
That's a very classic example. This pipeline was hit by a cyber threat. And of course, in this case, they attacked the IT environment, but they shut down the OT environment only because they say the company claims that they were not sure how it would affect the OT side. To protect that, they shut down the plant. It was chaos. Full of the East Coast was completely down. 8,850 kilometer line of complete pipeline was shut down. People didn't have gas. So this is the power, and I cannot define availability more and the stronger sense. You didn't have anything. There's complete chaos, and this is the example we have just a few weeks ago.
Right. So this is great. Obviously, I mean, these are bigger companies. They have much higher risk of getting attacked. I don't know if the SMB companies typically have the same amount of risk. I don't know what you have seen in your experience. And by the way, you bring a very important point there with respect to overlap of the cybersecurity as well as operational security. So even if, let's say, companies plan for cyber and do not plan for operational security, they could still be impacted overall from the availability perspective. So let's say if I'm the manufacturer, Denrich, and I need to figure this out, okay? Obviously,
Mhm.
I cannot afford to have my plant go down even for an hour because that's a huge
Right.
loss for me overall, right? So obviously,
Absolutely.
I cannot afford to do that. Now, when I'm planning for operational security, should I plan for the operational security first? Should I plan for the cyber security first? Do they need to be thought through as a combined security profile? How to go about planning for the security overall?
From my point of view is you have to look at, with a different lens when you're
Okay.
coming to industrial cybersecurity. Absolutely different lens because the processes are different. The critical aspect which is critical for OT is very different to what is IT is. So IT security, obviously there are IT professionals and security experts who have
Yeah.
to do that. Mind you, both are equally important. Okay, so you
Yeah.
have to have IT security for sure, and you cannot have one after the other. It has to be there, period. Okay,
Yeah.
now coming back to your question regarding OT security. In OT security, you should have people who have process experiences and cyber or security experiences. This is very important. If a guy comes and tries to deploy it, maybe he would not understand few of the nuances which is needed, and maybe there could be gaps in that. So my recommendation would be to have a guy or expert, cybersecurity expert, who is coming out of that domain, and that is highly recommended. Unfortunately, you don't have many people who have both experience coming out of the industry, so that is a little bit of a challenge, and sometimes you have to kind of have a little bit of a bridge. But my recommendation would be for any company to get people from the industry background doing cybersecurity. So that is strongly recommended. Second piece is the conversion part. Because I have a very strong opinion in this. For me,
Yeah.
there should be segregation between IT and OT security, and that's period. You have different methods to do it. You can air gap it. You can have demilitarization zone, and there are many different techniques. But you cannot interact, intertwine, whatever you guys want to tell it, and people say we have different technologies, we can do this. I say stop, because when your OT networks are compromised, lives can be lost. It's not a joke. Here, data is lost, and then you have two things will happen. Of course, that is also important. Money you lose because you have to pay ransom to these threat actors, or maybe your reputation is lost. But when an OT environment is attacked, their environments can be damaged. Big, huge loss to the environments can happen. People's lives will be lost. Assets, complete assets can be blown up, or some of pieces can be damaged. It's super serious. I cannot emphasize more seriousness of what's going to affect when you touch, or an industrial side is attacked.
Okay, so let's talk about, and I don't know how many of the listeners are going to be familiar with the technical side of things, right? So we need to break it down for them. So when you talk
Right.
about this terms like, OT network, so how does OT network work? Is it going to be a different network than your business system network in a standard manufacturing situation? And when these guys are trying to attack, are they trying to attack the network from the operational perspective? Are these machines that we have on the shop floor, are they connected to the OT network? I don't know if the manufacturers that we are going to have right now, they are probably going to have a lot of CNC machines on their shop floor. Are those CNC machines connected to OT network, which is at a risk at this point of time?
For the manufacturers, obviously the CNC machines are controlled by PLCs.
Yeah,
You know this, Sam, right? And
yeah,
these PLCs are also then now connected to an HMI, is a human machine interface, wherein you have a screen and you can control the settings or set points for these particular machines. And some of these networks are connected in fairly large networks. So for me, this is OT network, because your machines, all these machines or different machines are connected to each other, and they're talking to each other. So yes, these networks has to be protected. And we didn't go to the process of how do you secure this. The first
yeah.
step, I just stopped with the first step. So I'm going to retrack back. So the first
Okay.
step, what I told you is we should define the business rationals, and maybe many of you guys understand that. Second step here is to get support from the C-suite whenever you're going to plan your OT or IT, any cybersecurity deployment. Okay, so that is most important thing. Then the third phase, what you have to do is the analysis phase. And what do I mean by the analysis phase or the assess phase? So the analysis phase means you have to identify all critical assets and data in that particular organization. Why this is important? Because if you cannot identify, what can you protect? If there is no visibility of this data I want to protect, then there is nothing to protect. So that's the first step, is to identify your critical assets and data. Second step, I'm a big fan of policies and procedures. You definitely need to have policies and procedures in place. After that, what we do, what we call is the risk matrix. We prepare the risk matrix, or in simple man's term is we prepare what is the risk appetite for that particular organization. Then, and what I would do is get an external audit. If you have internal teams, yes, fine. You prepare your analysis. For example, you take this network, you check what is the critical aspect of it, and you define your scope for that particular network. And my recommendation would be that you should also have a third party guy coming in to do this assessment, completely define what you need to kind of protect. And next phase is what you call it is the vulnerability assessment. That means you check what are the gaps or holes you have in in your networks or in that particular organization. Not only the networks here, Sam. I'm talking
Yeah.
in general. It could be gaps in your security, gaps in your documentation, security gaps in also in your when you're defining the employee segregation, there is gaps in your firewalls. If firewall policies have been put in place, sometimes what happens is they say, oh, we have put all the firewall policies in place, but the password, what they do is the password is still the default password. I've seen this. So there has to be a perfect check of all these different parameters internally, and maybe if you don't have staff, get an external guy. Even if you do internally, I highly recommend to have one external guy come and check all these parameters. Then you spoke about network, how you do it in the industrial world, and it could be also so for the manufacturing world. You have to do network segmentation. That means which is your critical network, you have to segregate from the general network. For example, people are using their computers and all these other normal stuff, that should be segregated from your critical network. So that is one very important thing what you need to do. You have to define the zone, conduit. So these is the phase what we call as the analysis phase. The next phase is the implementation phase. That means where you have a visibility, okay, these are the critical parts, this network is critical, this assets are critical, this data is critical. Then you start deploying countermeasures for these things. Then the next phase is called the maintenance phase, where you do regular monitoring, you do
Yeah.
regular audits, you put SOPs in place, you take regular backups. There are many things in that, but this is in general. And one more thing what I want to emphasize in the maintenance phase, please, I request, please, updates. People, whenever I see and I talk to some of the people, updates, okay, we will do it later. When you see an update, you have to do the updates immediately, because of not doing an update, you are super vulnerable. So this is one more point what I wanted to highlight here. Then the final thing is the business continuity plan. You should have a solid business continuity plan. And in case you are hacked for whatever reason, and nobody can guarantee you cannot be hacked in today's day and time. So you should also have a incident response plan in place. So these are the few basic things or generic things you should have in place to protect yourself from cyber attacks.
Okay, amazing. So let's talk about some of those critical assets. So let's say if you are, again, I think things are getting a little bit mixed here with respect to cybersecurity and OT. And I don't know if they both need to be executed together. But let's say if we look at the operational side of things, OT side of things, right? What are going to be some of the critical assets that we need to consider in your plan? So let's say, Denrich, you are coming to our facility for the audit. So what are going to be some of the assets that we need to be paying attention and we need to include in the plan to make sure that we are going to be covered from the operational security perspective?
Okay, one thing I think so there's I want to highlight here is OT is an environment and IT is an environment.
Yeah.
Okay, and there are two separate environments. In OT environments, you will have computers, you will have servers.
Yeah.
Okay, and in IT environment, you will also have that. How to protect is different strategies altogether. First step is in a plant. Normally, the plant people are more. They know what is their critical asset and they will define. So it's not the consultant who consultant is an advisor point. The plant people know. But for a generic view, whenever we walk through whenever we go to a plant, OT side, most of their asset would be definitely for any processes, PLCs which are connected in that particular network, whatever the engineering stations they have, the servers they have for that particular processes. And then the next level is the SCADA systems they have. So these are all critical assets, what we have to man in an OT environment.
Okay. Do you have any stories that you might be able to share related to the process changes that you have made, let's say, in your previous engagements?
Right. I will give you some stories from an audit perspective.
Yeah.
you will be surprised even in some of the smaller, obviously, but also in medium and large scale organization when you do uh, simple things as updates, which I highlighted a bit, man, is not done on a regular basis. Why updating of your servers or any machines in that OT network is important? Because if you don't do the regular updates, you're not patched. When you're not patched, you are vulnerable for attacks. So this I have seen, they don't have a proper systems in place. Second classic example, you'll think it's basic and simple, but these are super important. They don't have a proper system to conduct the backups. They have the backup tapes and everything in place. Then I went to this side and I said, okay. I said, you do? Yeah, we take backups. We take backups very regular. I said, yeah, that's great. Fantastic. What is the frequency of taking your backups? Do you take it daily basis or a weekly basis? Nothing. Cricket. Then I asked, okay, now you take backups, you said. I said, your system, imagine your system would fail. Okay. Do you know, are you sure there's backups you will deploy will bring the system live within whatever company time frame you've defined? Will it come? But have you tested your backups? No, again, crickets. So even when you're trying to deploy hi-fi technology stuff, when you're not even ready with your basic stuff, that's why I always say technology is fine, but as long if you don't use that technology well and you're not doing the simple things right, and if you don't have the policies and procedures, even for a backup, how to deploy it, when to take it, and main thing is who's responsible for the backup. So these are the challenges what I see on a regular basis, Sam, and these are some of the stories. One more story I have, very interesting stories on, we call USB as the evil one in our industry. I went to this plant, I said, oh, USB, is it controlled? Saying, yeah, yeah, very, very controlled. And I said, how many USBs you have? So I don't know how many they had in my mind, but they had quite a bit of USBs. And I said, do you have any policies to control it? Like you said, you have USBs, maybe 20 USBs around, and who's the custodian for that? Do you have policies in place for approval policies in place? Is this USB hygiene, the USB hygiene is monitored on a weekly or bi-weekly basis? Is it kept in key and lock? No answers at all. See, to deploy USB, two things. Either you can have systems in place, because there is a box wherein you put the USB and that system will check the health of that or the hygiene of that USB, and then it can be deployed to the network. That is one way of doing it. The second way is cost is that you have defined number of USB. It could be 5, whatever. You define the number, it's in lock and key, there's an approval process in place, and then you distribute. In this case, the answer was, and I'm surprised and sorry to tell you, oh, this USBs, it's safe because it does not leave the premises. These USBs are in the office, that's why it is safe and everybody can use it in the network. And I was shocked with this reply, Sam.
Okay, amazing. So let's touch base on your comment about the impact of overall OT network, and the lives could be lost. And obviously, when we look at the manufacturing floor, it's definitely going to be slightly more involved than simply losing your data. Obviously, financially and from the risk perspective, even that could be slightly more damaging. But overall, when you look at the manufacturing floor, as you correctly pointed out, that the issues could be slightly more serious. So can you describe how the issues are going to be so serious on the manufacturing floor? Do you have any stories where there was a life-threatening situation because of a security issue in the OT network or on the shop floor?
At the moment, for me personally, I didn't have that because, the experience, thankfully, which was kind of life-threatening um, with me. But but I can give you some stories and industry stories, which is pretty relevant, and one of the stories is in the utility side, and that can happen in the manufacturing side also. You have a machine there, which is, for example, maybe it is a cutting process, and the speed is changed, and the speed
Yeah.
to cut that is changed by it's hacked. The machines is hacked, and they change the speed to go at a x number of amount, and and it starts spinning faster, and so that could cause some kind of damage. And one example of which maybe you heard a few years ago, not few years, few months ago, in the water sector, wherein the hackers hacked into the system and they changed certain set points of the water system, and they increased the level of certain chemicals which would not be healthy, for consuming. But thankfully, the operator was agile, and he saw it, and before any damage could have happened, he kind of changed the process parameters to normal parameters and avoided a threat. So these are the things which can be easily done by just changing a simple set point. For example, I'll give you one more example. You're in a plant and you have a reactor. The reactor, there is certain temperature and pressure has to be maintained. If the
Yeah.
temperature or the pressure is not maintained at certain level, it can go into a chain reaction or an exothermic reaction, and it can blow up that particular reactor. People who are nearby, lives can be lost. How it is possible? Just by changing one simple set point. Once you are infiltrated into that particular network. So these are real problems, and these can happen. Thankfully, it's not had happened. I've never seen a life lost, thankfully. Till date, worldwide, there's not been a life lost, but attacks are becoming more and more regular in the OT world or the industrial world, and same goes for the manufacturing industries. There could be some critical process in the manufacturing industry, which I'm not familiar so much with the manufacturing side, but the protection level, the level what you need to do to deploy different countermeasures to protect remains the same. The study remains the same. The process remains the same. Of course, the process is a little bit different in different manufacturing, which unfortunately I don't have so much information. But I'm telling you stories from process side, which hopefully you can relate to the manufacturing world as well.
Okay, so let's take this example of the machines that we have on the shop floor, and that's a great example that even if you're let's say the machine is hacked and they are able to take control of one of the set points, and because of that the state of the machine is actually changing, right? And the machine is acting really weird because that's not really in your control from the user perspective, right? So let's say if I talk to my guys who are actually trying to sell me a machine, I mean, they are always going to say that, what, I have my machine is security compliant by this standard, that standard. As an executive, I am taking all the precaution that I need to take in sort of having these measures at my facility. But when I look at my own processes and network, I don't know. One of the things that you mentioned is really about the updates, right? So if
Right.
my machine is not going to be updated, my hardware profile is not going to be updated, I am actually leaving a lot of holes there that can be controlled externally by external factors. But there are going to be some other things in play as well. For example, you mentioned that the USB, let's say, I don't know if these USBs are going to be present on these CNC machines, and the CNC machines are going to be connected to a network. And because of that, the hacking is happening. So can you describe a little bit more overall in terms of what are the factors that need to be controlled along with the whatever is provided by my provider from the machine perspective? Because my providers are always going to claim that, what, you are protected because my machine is certified by this. But then you have other things that you are interacting with, such as your network, such as your USB ports, right? Those are
You're
exposed. So you are
excellent.
definitely going to have some sort of security risk. So from your perspective, do you want to describe what are different touch points that could be in play along with the certification that is provided by my provider?
There are two certifications. One is the industrial certification, but some of the manufacturers these days have to provide cybersecurity certification also, especially if the machine is controlled by any controllers. As
Yeah.
soon as you have controllers, now these days controllers are being hacked. We've seen in the past. There's a hack in Saudi Arabia refinery on the controllers. There's been hacked in some of the sensitive countries I cannot name. those have been hacked. The controllers have been hacked. And I know CNC machines are controlled by controllers. One second, they are in a network, and some of these definitely have a USB. So whatever you said, these are very classic example where your manufacturing or OEMs cannot claim that you are protected. The manufacturer has to deploy cybersecurity countermeasures, cybersecurity hygiene, cybersecurity processes
Yeah.
for his environment to be protected. Just the manufacturing saying I'm protected is not enough. Anything is connected is hacked. So connected is equal to hack. When I say connected, connected to the internet. So I would start with saying that the manufacturers should start having a cybersecurity audit. That is the starting point for them to realize how many open gaps they have in their system. When I go to the small and medium, they say, "Oh, we cannot be hacked. We are not so interesting." And I'll go one step further. You also have to do either a penetration test on those machines itself to check for holes or weaknesses on those machines as well. I would really go a little bit further. For example, even in the healthcare industries, these machines are all connected either wireless or they're connected to the internet. So these machines have intelligence as well. Again, penetration test has to be done to check for holes or check for weaknesses. So yeah, it's super important. Start with getting an audit. Strongly recommendation from my side.
Okay, so the listeners that might not be familiar with things like controller, can you describe a little bit more what is a controller and why that matters from the security perspective?
A controller is a piece, it's actually a piece of hardware,
Yeah.
and it has chips, and we feed intelligence into these chips. Okay, and then there is input and output systems in those controllers, which is connected to a bunch of sensors. The input side is connected to sensors. It could be temperature, pressure, flow, speed, and all these kind of sensors are connected, and these sensors are then going into these controllers, which has intelligence, and we put this intelligence by writing program into this controllers to control certain machines or process or applications, right? And then you have output like valves, you have output like relays, you have output like so many other pieces to control either closing of the valve, opening of the valve, the relay going, closing of the relay, switching of the relay. So these are the different pieces. So the input side, the controller, the intelligent side, and the output together makes the whole system work to control either some machines like your CNC machines for the manufacturing side of the business, or a plant or a process, complete application in the industry side of the business.
Okay, then that's it for today. Do you have any last minute closing thoughts by any chance?
Absolutely. My closing thought is cybersecurity is a top-down approach. Be it manufacturing industry, be it banking, be it oil and gas, whichever industry it is, the C-level should push this agenda from the top to the bottom. And cybersecurity is about three things: people, process, and technology. Here I want to take a minute and highlight something. So the most important thing here is cybersecurity should become a culture. It should become a part of your process. It should not be an overlay, underlay, side lane. No. When you're defining your cybersecurity, that's why I say cybersecurity should be by design, and you should design this together with your processes that becomes part of your culture, part of people, that they already know what they have to do. So that's why people is very important, process and technology. Third piece is training and awareness. I cannot highlight so importance of training your people, making them aware of cybersecurity and cyber threat. Again, I would like to end this interview with this quote by Albert Einstein: the world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it.
Hey, Denrich, and my personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be cyber security is all about proactiveness. So the more proactive you are in protecting yourself, hopefully you don't have to go through the same situation that some of these other manufacturers go through, and sometimes the risk could be losing their life income. So even though cybersecurity issues might be frightening, but the best strategy for any of the cybersecurity or the operational security is going to be just to do the preparation. The more preparation you are going to do, the easier it is going to be for you. On that note, I would like to thank you for your time, Denrich. This has been an insightful conversation.
Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Denrich, head over to aristatechnologies.ca. It's aristatechnologies.ca. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Michael Schwagenhofer, who discusses how insurance companies evaluate manufacturers' risk profiles. Also, the interview with Mike Niger, who discusses the operational metrics and KPIs that completely ignore the cost savings opportunities available through control and policies. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.